Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. Hey, folks, welcome to Spirituality Adventures. This was a episode that I wanted to get done before things changed too drastically again. Doug Pagitt is the founder of Vote Common Good. And Doug, you actually, do you live in Minneapolis or in the suburb?
I live one block from the border of Minneapolis and Edina. So I'm living in a little city called Edina, but we're right across the street from Minneapolis.
Okay.
So it's Minneapolis.
So he lives basically in the greater Minneapolis area. He has been on the front lines of protests against ICE in Minneapolis over these last several, weeks, months?
Yeah, it's been about 70 days since the federal incursion on a great American city took place.
Okay. So some of you may not know Doug, and I wanted him to give just a quick history of himself and why he founded Vote Common Good, and then what the purpose of Vote Common Good is. And then we're going to move into kind of like a big update on the whole scene that's been going on that we've been seeing played out in front of our eyes on news channels in Minneapolis as it relates to ICE, Renee Good, and Alex Preddy. So, but yeah, start first, just give folks an orientation to your work with Vote Common Good, who you are, what you're about, and why you even started Vote Common Good.
Glad to. And Fred, always good to chat with you. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. We started Vote Common Good in 2018 as a real response to the number of religious voters who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and said and felt that they were quite conflicted about their lack of choices. Many religious voters, especially evangelicals, which is the community of faith that I come from, felt like they didn't like the guy, but they were pretty sure Democrats liked them less than they liked Donald Trump, and they felt like they were trapped in who they were going to vote for. And so we started an organization to try to help people whose religious identity was calling them one direction and their political identity was calling them another, and they weren't sure how to respond to that conflict. So we help people who are trying to align their political identity with a faith identity in a way that frees them up from voting for people like Donald Trump or other Republicans, if that's what they want to do. Not everyone wants to do that. Some people are quite happy. They're quite confident in their vote and what they're doing. But Fred, you and I both know there are so many people who don't see themselves as fundamentally political. They see themselves as a faith person or a parent or a member of a community where they live. And politics kind of comes along, in that path. And for a lot of people, their religious commitment came with a side dish of being a Republican. Mm-hmm. They didn't really pick it. It's just everyone around was that way. That was sort of the default position that people took. And it kind of worked fine for a lot of people. And then it didn't. Mm. And we started Vote Common Good because we wanted to help those faith voters know that they could have voting identity around the common good and not around political parties alone. And then we also help Democratic candidates connect with those same faith voters. And I'll just say this, as worried as I was in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected, because I paid a lot of attention to him and took him much more seriously than a lot of people did, his two administrations, in my view, have been devastatingly worse than even I was predicting and warning about. I think it's just been so harmful to America, to the globe, to global alliances, frankly, to the planet, and everyone who lives on it. And there are more than 1 million children around the world right now that feel the impact of the Trump administration breaking the promise that America has made for nearly 60 years through USAID, who are starving to death because of this administration. So I'm really committed to helping people know that they have other options other than Donald Trump. And I will admit that in this past election, more people who chose to vote in that election disagreed with me than those who agreed. So the work we do is we think important and we hope is going to make some kind of a contribution as we go down the road. But I fundamentally see myself as a pastor. I've been a working pastor since I was 19 years old. I started working at a church and have been employed as a pastor of some variety and in faith communities or working with other pastors for my entire life. And that's really how I see myself and the role that I do. I'm an activist for sure. I'm an executive director of 2 nonprofits. But I see myself as a person of faith and as a person who's pastoring. And I do that inside of what I refer to as a progressive evangelical wing of the evangelical Christian church in America, which a lot of people don't even know there is such a thing as a progressive evangelical. They think their only options are to be either a conservative evangelical or to be post-evangelical. And I understand that conflict a lot of people have, but the way I got into Christianity, if you're interested in that story, I'd be glad to tell you because I think it informs sort of what I do now and how I think about my faith and role in the world and all the rest of that. So I'm glad to give you a little background if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, you can do it quickly. I would refer people back to an interview I did with you a couple of years ago, probably. And we dove pretty deeply into that, but just touch on it real quickly.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in a religious context. I became aware of Christianity in a single evening and the next day. Like I had no religious background at all. I didn't know Christmas and Easter were related. I'd never read the Bible. I never received the Christian vaccine of Sunday school as a kid. So I didn't know any of these things. Had a religious experience at a passion play and felt a very deep call that story, the story of Jesus, the story of God and humans engaged together, was a story that was going to captivate my life, and I've been involved in that the whole time. So my own experience is not trying to be a chaplain of religiosity in America, and I feel like some of the call that we're in right now is to always see any religion that anyone holds, any philosophy anyone holds, as something that's a benefit and blessing to the world and is not primarily about your own benefits and the gains that you're going to make out of it. So, and somewhere along the line, I heard Dallas Willard. Do you know who that is? Do you?
I knew him personally. He actually attended a Vineyard church, and I was in the Vineyard for 30 years. So
yeah. So then you've probably heard all the Willardisms, but one that really captivated how I was thinking at the time and really sharpened and led me down a path was this phrase that he would say where he said, there's a lot of Christians who basically approach Jesus like a vampire. They want Jesus for his blood and not much else. And that idea that they are committed to believing in Jesus, but sometimes you wonder if they believe Jesus. Mm. And I came from a world in which the preposition in, believe in Jesus, wasn't as important as do you believe Jesus? So do you believe that you should love one another, that you should love God, neighbor, enemy, and self the same, no distinction, and that you're actually called to be a protection and a blessing to others, irrespective of what you think some theological equation is going to provide for you. So, and I know for a lot of people that's not their thing. And I watch a lot of post-evangelicals leave evangelicalism because they were taught basically a version of fundamentalism and legalistic rule following, and really very little to do with the spirit of what Jesus was up to and following the way of Jesus. So anyway, that's the kind of Christian I was. But I started churches and I lead pastor things and I'm write books and leadership books and Christian spirituality books. So that's been the arena that I've been in. And in the last 10 years, I've really taken a pivot to try to be engaged in Christian spirituality in public spaces, frankly, much more than inside of the religious communities that we're in. So I do a lot of public work, and I work in Vote Common Goods, national work. We travel the country and do all kinds of things.
Excellent. Yeah. And as you know, I came to Christ at 16 in the late 70s in a Southern Baptist youth camp, and very much, I voted for Reagan. I was pro-life. I'd read Keith Green's Babies, Things We Throw Away. So I had kind of was definitely a pro-life Republican. Also kind of thought, I want a balanced budget, and different things like that. So, but when Trump came on the scene, I voted for Kasich in the primaries, John Kasich, who was the former governor of Ohio. I thought he was one of the more decent candidates on that whole thing. And the way that I've watched my white evangelical friends coalesce around a guy like Donald Trump, his character, his policies, to me, I almost agree with is it Peter Weiner? Do you say his name like that, or Weiner?
Yeah, I think so. I think he says
who's writing for the Atlantic, and he's writing about the moral collapse of white evangelicalism.
Yeah.
I'm just I still feel stunned by it because my own raising of following Jesus in a very evangelical world led me to, I didn't like Trump from the day one when he was grabbing this and that and everything else since, it's just been shocking to me, actually. So, and with my own meltdown, it's I think people forgave me for my addiction and my unfaithfulness in my marriage, but I've had more heat and anger and hatred for being pro-LGBTQ plus and anti-Trump. I've gotten more heat on those two issues, than I did for my own moral meltdown.
Right. Look, Look,
it's crazy.
The version of Christianity that a lot of us have run around in, or the parallel versions of Christianity that exist inside of Catholicism and so on, have this strangest thing where they're more bothered by gay marriage than they are by heterosexual divorce and infidelity.
Yeah.
Now, there might be reasons, but if you're going to be a Jesus-y like the Bible saith, you have a tough time giving a pass on divorce and unfaithfulness and being bothered by fidelity and marriage commitment. Now, but again, I don't think most people on their theology or their politics are fundamentally there because of policies or topics or beliefs. I think they're there out of identity. And policies and beliefs and topics reinforce the narrative we understand of ourselves and our identity, but they're not the things that create it. We have a few basic structures that hold our beliefs, and everything else is just reinforcement. The rooms we are both in, an architect will say, there are certain beams in that wall that are holding up your roof and are holding up the walls. The rest of it, it's structure for the wallpaper and for the insulation, and it's not the structural beams. It's not the structural integrity. As it turns out, evangelicals, for the most part, have been living in houses with very little structural integrity in their spiritual lives. Because Donald Trump could come in and just say, get rid of that one, remove that. And they said, yes, sir. Yeah. I mean, until the point that, honestly, Kid Rock is seen as the alternative. I mean, Kid Rock, just when you and I think back in our lives, at what point would we have said, I think one of the leading evangelical groups in America wants to provide an alternative to the Super Bowl halftime show? and they're going to go with Donald Trump and Kid Rock. I mean, at one point, if that's the only piece that you had, and you said, what else? What is going on at halftime at the Super Bowl? You probably, and you can just look, I don't care about the Super Bowl. I don't care about halftime shows. I don't care about, artists, musicians. But it's just illustrative of the whole thing. You could replace that same equation 100 times over with what's gone on, right?
That cracked me up.
Ridiculous.
I love Kendrick Lamar. I love Bad Bunny. I was so happy to have both of them at the halftime Super Bowl. All my black and brown friends loved it. It was only my white friends that fussed about it.
I know a bunch of black evangelicals that fussed about it.
Did they?
Oh yeah. Oh.
Really?
Oh yes.
Bad Bunny? Kendrick Lamar?
Well, the idea that somehow they're first of all, the idea that the Super Bowl is supposed to somehow conjure up some version of America that they're going to approve of, and then that the Christian community is calling them for something towards something else. Look, I mean, evangelicalism has been so wedded with a white narrative that even people that don't live white culture are influenced by it.
Yeah.
It's
my black pastor friends here in Kansas City didn't fuss about Kendrick Lamar or Bad Bunny.
Yeah. Well, did you see America Fest?
No.
You see the people around Trump. I mean, I'm just saying it's not.
They're there.
Look, the black church is not a monolith.
No, of course not.
The white church is not a monolith. The Hispanic church is not a monolith. The Catholic church is not a monolith. There are just people all around this whole thing, and people who are committed to some kind of politicism and tell themselves, frankly, I'm not political. I just want to follow the law, or I want balanced budgets, or I'm a Christian, or, I always have something else. And then when you listen to them, it is just pure, and it's not even political in the old school sense. It is Trumpism. Hardcore. I mean, you've probably seen these videos. I've seen them. I've done this with a lot of people where I will say to them things like, well, that time, and then I describe something Donald Trump did, but I say when Joe Biden did this thing, and they're like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And I say, oh, I'm sorry. Did I say Joe Biden? I meant Donald Trump. And almost to a person in that religious subset, that religious cult subset, somehow there's a deference to this guy that they never gave to George Bush. They never gave to Ronald Reagan. They never gave to George Bush Sr. They didn't give to Nixon. There is a different relationship that so many religious people have with Donald Trump that is its own psychological thing, trying to figure out. Yeah, right.
I've got family members, all that, so. I
bet people push back harder on you about your rejecting Trump than they would have if you ever argued about George Bush.
100%.
They were mad about Medicaid Part B, and they're literally not mad about every boondoggle grift inside the Trump administration. So that's just the world we live in, and I never would have seen it coming, but Fred, there were times in the 1980s and 90s where I thought, man, I wonder what it was like to live in times of such social moral clarity and consequence. Right? The civil rights movement, the abolitionist movement, the women's suffrage movement, the development of a country. Like, those periods of time felt like it was clear what was right and wrong. There were a whole lot of people in all traditions picking wrong, and I wonder what it was like. Mm-hmm. And here we are.
Yeah, for sure.
I just think it is in that genre for sure, and we have a prominent role in it. And frankly, old white guys like us, we have a responsibility. I I mean, I've been at lots of things on the streets out here with teenagers and people in their 20s, and I just look around and think, I am so sorry. I mean, I'm a late Gen Xer. You might even be a Gen Xer. Like, look what we did. Did you know that the Gen X generation is the most Trump voting generation of them all?
I didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm a young boomer, not an old Xer.
Yeah.
We're really. What year were you born?
66.
I was 61. See, so yeah.
I don't even understand how you see the world. How could I even? Where do you eat? What language do you speak? Okay, boomer, go on.
I speak Amharic. All right. Anyway, so immigration. As a Jesus follower, I look at the Torah, 600 and some commands in the Torah, and the most frequent command in the Torah, 36 times I think, is we're to love the ger, is the Hebrew word ger. It's translated sometimes stranger or alien, but it really is talking about people who have been dislodged from their homeland. So it could be immigrant, refugee, all different kinds of reasons why people would pick up and move. And of course, the patriarchs were immigrants like that. They were ger when they came to the land, and Moses and the whole people were immigrants, right? Moving, and then Jesus immigrated to Egypt and all of these things. So Jesus taught in the great sheep and goats that how we treat those people is how we treat, it's a divine encounter of sorts when we love those people. So when I talk about loving the immigrant and the refugee, immediately people think I'm talking about open borders, and they see every undocumented person as a criminal, not just undocumented people who have committed a crime. So I'm curious what your perspective is on immigration, and then we're going to dive into specifically Minneapolis, what's been happening the last 70 some days or so.
Yeah, I have in the last 10 years become very engaged in immigration work, very engaged at the border. I have spent a lot of time at the border, spent a lot of time with the organizations that help people cross the border. I've realized that in immigration, there are different sectors of it. There are people who have a lot of care and consideration for people currently in the United States under some sort of a status, like temporary protective status, or they're dreamers, or they're asylum seekers, or they're green card applicants. That has sort of one apparatus that it operates in and around. And then there's new people coming in the country, people who are crossing the border. Our rules and our procedures and our laws about who's going to come in the country. Our immigration law is wildly complicated, wildly inconsistent, and designed to be ineffective. It seems to me in some way that both parties are happy with the chaos, and it drives me crazy. Now, I'm not doing both sidesism. It's not that. I'm just saying both political parties over the last 40 years have had times where their party had enough authority and power in Congress and the presidency to solve these issues, and both parties have chosen not to. So something has been going on around all of that. And the collateral is not just the impact on immigrants, it's the damage to our country, because this is a nation that is actually designed for new people to come, for new lands to be acquired in the early days, and then for new people to come and to fill those lands. That's the structure of the United States. It's actually the narrative from the founding of this country, that it's not a blood and soil country, that it's not a place designed around an ethnic group or a religious group, that it's this calling together of people who want to live under a constitutional democratic republic. So it's a mess. And it is a mess that Republicans are currently engaging in a level of slander and lies about immigrants and about the American story. And I think they do it intentionally. Donald Trump knew people were not eating dogs. J.D. Vance knew they were not eating dogs.
They're
J.D.
eating
Vance even
people's
said he knew
pets.
that.
They're eating people's pets.
But they said it. Donald Trump probably does believe that immigrants are polluting the bloodstream of America, which he said in a speech. Not accidentally, on the teleprompter. Polluting the bloodstream of America.
Where does that line come from, Doug, historically?
Yeah. That's been a common refrain, which actually, goes. You can find it in Europe in World War II with Germany. You can find it in the United States story of slavery.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and to the degree that we have told ourselves we've been good on immigration, this country has rarely been good on immigration. Like there's barely been a time, and you mentioned that you did a whole conversation about the history of how we've treated documentation and who's documented and who's not and how you get in the country and the exclusions that we've had and the rules that we have. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of rules that are really broken and really bad. And the fundamental question that people of good conscience need to ask is, in my view, why don't these people come legally? It's a refrain that we hear all the time in the work that we do, whether we're at the border or out on the streets of Minneapolis.
They need to be vetted.
Why don't they come legally?
Yeah.
Well, we should all be saying, why don't they come legally? The answer is because for most of those people, there is no legal way to come. Secondly, because the Trump administrations in his first term and his second term have changed the legal status of people who are in this country. He has made people's status move from legally here to not legally here by executive order, canceling temporary protective status, canceling dreamer exceptions, changing asylum status for people from Somalia, for people from Haiti, and people from Afghanistan.
Yes.
So why are they not here legally? Because there's not a pathway. And if someone believes there's a pathway, they're ripping their hair out because they're just saying, like, there is a line. I hear this all the time. Like, these people are jumping the line to be in America. They literally believe they've been told there's a line and they're jumping to the front of it or they're skipping the line. The reality is that metaphor doesn't work at all because there is no line. If you come from Central America, Mexico, and you seek a work visa here and you apply for it, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars that you never get back whether you get a work visa or not. And it's a 15 to 25 year wait list. Does that make any sense? Does it make any sense that we have a law that says no more than 10% of total immigrants in a year that come in the United States with legal status can come from any one country? And Fred, the question that I ask people all the time is this in our immigration work. And we have a documentary about our work. We have trainings that we do. We can do them online. We go to places. We do them in churches. We do them in civic sites on common good immigration. And one of the questions that we ask everyone to consider deeply is, are there too many immigrants in America, about right, or not enough? Just sort of your impulse. How do you feel?
Yeah.
And then we say to people, based on that, what's the right number? What's the right number of immigrants that should come in a year or over 5 years or over 10 years? So if you listen to Republicans like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, they will move around saying somewhere between 10 and 30 million immigrants have come into the United States over the last 8 or 10, 12 years. A wildly, ridiculously high number. When you ask them where that number comes from, it came out of they're eating our pets file folder.
Right.
But let's just say for a minute that's true. 30 million over the last 10 years. In a population of 350 million people with a declining birth rate, is adding 8.5% population a problem or a good thing? why Democrats and other people who care about these issues don't talk about, in addition to the individual personal call for us to care about and collective call for us to care about the least of these, many immigrants are not actually the least of these.
Right.
Many immigrants are actually the best of us, and they will be the best of us.
Right.
And how many do we want? At some point, I know we don't all like to do math, but at some point, this becomes a math question of because J.D. Vance continues to say, he said it 2 days ago, the reason housing prices are so high and rental prices are so high is because of immigrants.
He's just...
Have you ever heard of a rental market being moved by less than 8% of a population? It's just so... Look, it is scapegoating.
Yeah.
But I will say this, the argument that the Trump people make, and I think it matters, they don't fundamentally say we're just racist. Here's what they say. They believe that there's something that makes up American culture, American society, the American ethos, they call it. And too many immigrants coming in dilutes that or pollutes it. J.D. Vance tried to make this argument sitting in the Vatican, arguing against the Pope's idea to a representative from the Vatican. If you haven't watched the interview, it's disgusting. But he tries to argue that we have to eliminate the amount of immigrants who are coming to the United States because there's too many and we're losing what it truly means to be American. And this is what makes people look at the halftime show and say, that's not really America. Because when some people say we the people, they have a very select group of folks in mind that are counted in the we. And immigration always asks us to consider who's the we in we the people. Now, I don't think that the Bible should be used for public policy choices and decisions on any topic, whether it be immigration or healthcare or textile rules about what fabrics we can blend together. I think the Bible is great for a lot of things. I think as an edict for civil society, it's not designed for it. It's not meant for it. It could be my motivation, and other people could have other motivations, and it should drive us to political participation. But frankly, we have to, in my view, have to have other rationale rather than the Bible says. Mm-hmm. We don't make our policy around the book of Leviticus or the book of Romans or the Sermon on the Mount. That's not a proper use of Scripture. And sometimes progressives want to say that about some topics, mm-hmm. and they want to then use it when they want to talk about other topics. And we just have to be better at figuring out how not to dip into some kind of soft version of Christian nationalism to justify what matters to us. Now, we can say, as good people, we believe from our tradition that we should behave in a particular way, and other traditions have other ways.
Sure.
We can absolutely and should absolutely do that. But our issues around immigration cannot simply be what's been the biblical model of immigrants. It needs to be, what is the call of the United States of America and what's our role in the world? And that's what's actually being challenged. What the Trump administration and their work with ICE and their work with trying to mass deportations from the 2014 Republican convention, they had printed signs held above people's heads saying mass deportation. Mass deportation. Yeah. So they've never been about the worst of the worst. They're not trying to just figure out how you get sanctuary cities to turn over convicted criminals to ICE. It's just nothing. We can get to it about Minneapolis because ICE is finally pulling out of Minneapolis because we drove them out. But it happened because, or their rationale is that finally the county jails and the prison system are going to turn these folks over, and the people in the jails and the prison systems are like, we've been doing that the whole time. Nothing has changed. Like, you just wanted us to write it down, the thing we've been doing for decades. they're obviously, like all things in the Trump administration, in my view, a massive failure, causing great damage, and now they're trying to back out. So that's a very opinionated view, of course, but that's what I think is happening.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a separation of church and state guy. I'm not a Christian nationalist, so I don't think the Bible should be the foundation of that rule and law. But I'm a pastor, and I have people who call themselves Jesus followers, and in that arena, happy to point out what the Bible says about these topics.
That's right. See, I think what you're getting at and saying so well is, if you are being told by your political leaders to demonize people, and you're being told by your religious teaching to honor people, what are you going to do? That's the right thing. But then that gets us to a point of what are the laws going to be that dictate how many people come in the country, where they can come from, how long they stay, when they can come and go, and does it make sense to have 29 immigration categories? It's bizarre, it's ridiculous, it's unwieldy, it doesn't make any sense. And there are some people who don't like it when Trump says they're garbage, they come from shithole countries. I mean, here's the thing about talking about immigration with Donald Trump on most podcasts. People are like, don't actually say the words Donald Trump says, because that's kind of too vulgar for us. Which is so great, when you're like, you can't put it up on YouTube because you'll get a profanity violation, but the president of the United States can just stand in front of crowds of cheering people and say they come from shithole countries. Yeah. So, there's still this kind of soft, puritanical thing that we get into in this country where we let that guy run wild, and we let masked ICE agents carry weapons and point them in the faces and discharge them into the backs and the chests of American citizens. And we're bothered by the fact that we think immigrants don't follow a broken immigration system when they're trying to join and rekindle their family in the United States. It's like the epitome of, worrying about the wrong things in my view. Yeah. But I do think Christians should be called into a robust conversation about immigration. And most people that I know, when they find out how immigration actually works, what the structure is, that there are not 10 million people who snuck in the country and are in here for nefarious purposes. That's just it's just untrue. It's just not real. And if that's the basis by which people are shaking their fists at what's happening in Minneapolis or what's happening in the United States, they've actually gotten it totally wrong.
So let's move to the context here. You've been filming on the front lines the last 70 some days in Minneapolis. Give us, you live there, you guys during COVID went through the George Floyd thing. It seems like Minneapolis has been a flashpoint in so many culture wars over these things. And then, obviously ICE coming in, Renee Good shot January 7th. Alex Pretty's shot January 24th. We all watched the videos. We all watched what our eyes saw. We all saw Kristi Noem calling these two people domestic terrorists. I started realizing that according to her and Donald Trump, evidently I'm one too. I'm a domestic terrorist. Didn't know that.
I promise you that.
Didn't know that, but I guess that's what I am now. Give us your pre-ICE invasion, ICE invasion, and I want to lean toward community organizing because, Doug, I'm really trying to partner in Kansas City right now with the best of racial justice work, social justice work, and trying to do community organizing. I'm networked with some of the best in the city. But what can we learn from this situation? Because it appears to me like you guys, the community organizing that went on either spontaneously or strategically succeeded in driving ICE out of Minneapolis.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think what was demonstrated here is in some ways a new era of community organizing that's an important transition from where community organizing has been historically in our country and where it has sat for the last decade or so. It hasn't been as effective as we've wanted. Community organizing in a lot of ways, I've been involved in a lot of it in different places in the country, tends to be fundamentally hierarchical or protective. Who are the community organizers? So the fact that we could say, and people would be like, hey, Doug, in Minneapolis, you're one of the community organizers, right? Or they would say, who are the community organizers? I'm coming to town. Who are the community organizers I should meet with? And there's a whole structure that some people didn't even know about until they're like, Barack Obama was a community organizer? I don't even know what that is. And then there's structures and people go to trainings. I've been to those trainings. There's this is what community organizing is. Okay, there's been that movement. Mm-hmm. A lot of places are still functioning in that. The weaknesses in that are severe. And the people who know the weaknesses the most are people who carry the burden of being the, quote, community organizers. Mm-hmm. So you hear this all the time, especially from Black community organizers or Hispanic community organizers or indigenous community organizers. They're like, hey, we can't do this work for you. Get busy yourselves. Almost every community organizer says all the time to people, do something, and then a bunch of people say yeah, but you're the community organizer. So what should we do? And they're like, something. Get busy. I'm not going to do your work for you. And so there's been this strange relationship between people who want to be active and community organizing. Now, after the Trump era has created a lot of things. Indivisible is actually a curious community organizing way that's not as bounded. It still is in some ways. I've been in we work with indivisible groups through Vocom and Good all over the country.
Those who don't know, they're the ones that are behind the No Kings rallies.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were a response to the people who were behind the Women's March, which was a community organizing thing, but then went hierarchical pretty fast. And then that thing broke up and the Black Lives Matter movement became hierarchical. And so there's some patterns that we've seen where something that happens in the United States structures is that once a group of people start functioning, someone's going to come in and put boundaries around it and put limits around it. That's what's not happening in Minneapolis.
Interesting.
Some of it's the instincts of the kinds of people here. And I'll tell you the people I've talked to who are most glad about that. And that's the minority community organizer leaders, Black leaders, Hispanic leaders, indigenous leaders. They're like, oh, good. We're glad to have some other people in here working too. We're glad everyone's not waiting for us. And Fred, frankly, to talk straight, people like us have been told, people in your social location, don't do anything right now. Go and find someone to work under. There's some good impulse in that, but that also puts a tremendous burden on these community organizers, right? So they're thrilled about how much is going on, that it's every community group, every neighborhood group, every individual, everybody with a Venmo account feels this sense of send me money and I'll go pay somebody's rent. We're not gonna run it through some hierarchy. We're just gonna solve these problems. Or this group called Haven got together and responded to people who've been detained by ICE and now are released, and they're walking out of the federal Whipple building and they don't have anything. They don't even have a coat on. ICE took it or they left it in their car and they just smashed these people's windows, grabbed them, pulled them in there, kept them for 6 hours or 4 days. Now they dump them on the street, literally just walk out. And these people are walking out looking around like, okay, I've never even been to this part of Minneapolis. I don't even know where I am. I'm out by the airport. And there's a group of self-organizing folks that put on vests and put Haven on their cars and are meeting people out there and we got you. Who do you need to call? Here's some food. Do you need a jacket? Self-organizing, actionable groups. This is what resistance has to look like. It has to be groups of people getting active on the ground right now, not waiting for permission from anyone, and joining in. And even the people. Some of the things that have helped that is that the city of Minneapolis, apparently, and I haven't heard anything from the city of Minneapolis about this, but I've been involved in lots of the protests and walks, and no one's pulling permits for that stuff. Maybe for the last 2 Fridays ago, the 50,000 person one they did, But I was in a 2,000 person biking event. Did you see that one? Where to honor Alex Preddy because he was a cyclist.
I was there.
More than 2,000 of us got together on a 10-mile bike ride through Minneapolis.
I saw it.
And that event and other walks and the singing resistance, just people with a yellow vest that you buy at Walmart standing out on every street corner blocking traffic. And I'll tell you, Fred, I've been all around the city through many of these marches, big ones and little ones. There's not a police officer to be found. The city of Minneapolis response was, the citizens have got it. Mm-hmm. Step back, they'll know what to do. Mm. And there hasn't been a moment of violence. There hasn't been a moment of frustration. And when Renee Good was killed, I was there a few hours afterward, and there was one guy who lost his mind and was actually in a delusional spiral, and a bunch of us came around and protected him, and he kind of got all wild, and he was on the same side of people, but they couldn't understand it, and it got all wacky. One guy and a bunch of us sort of helped that guy kind of figure it out. That's been it. So what's happening in Minneapolis is a kind of community organizing that's built, frankly, around a lot of social cohesion. Mm. And that's what goes back to George Floyd and before.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is that neighborhood of Alex, Renee, and George, how are those three incidents close to each other?
Yeah. I mean, here's one of the things about Minneapolis, which differentiates it from the other places that we've seen other than Portland. Portland's probably the closest to this because of just sheer size and design of a city. Minneapolis is not a sprawling city. Minneapolis is a small downtown and urban housing areas around it. And those of us who know, like I was on a podcast with somebody yesterday and I said, hey, just to be clear, all the places I've gone to, Alex Peretti's memorial, Renee Good's memorial, downtown Minneapolis, the Whipple building, I'm not having to put that in my, in Google Maps to know where we're going. We've all been there, if you live in Minneapolis and around Minneapolis, 1,000 times. Like it's right here. And the walking distance from where George Floyd was murdered at 34th in Chicago to 26th and Nicollet is, a mile and a half. And in the same general area, like if someone said, hey, do you want to meet at 34th in Chicago or 26th and Nicollet? It kind of doesn't matter. It's the same space. It's the same place. Well, actually, Renee Good was killed at 34th in Portland compared to 34th in Chicago. So yes, to your point, they are close to each other. They're all three incidents are in South Minneapolis. But you have to go back one step further about even the George Floyd incident. And that is that the city of Minneapolis Police Department and the police union was put under federal observation and federal takeover in the early 2000s. The corrupt nature of the Minneapolis Police Force Union was so rotten and so bad that the federal government came in and took it over once and then had to come in and take it over again in 2020 when George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin and police officers stood around. And it was another. So that reality that the Minneapolis Police Union had carried so much power that the city council and the mayor and the police chief couldn't even discipline the officers.
Wow.
That's why in Minneapolis, the city council chose to defund the police because they had to stop what was rot and rebuild it.
Yeah.
And the defund police, which launched out of Minneapolis and became a national call, made no sense if you're not in one of the places that have been under federal takeover already with a rot in it. And so through all those periods, from George Floyd's murder on, the people of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis area and the police force and the mayor have worked extraordinarily hard to build social cohesion.
Okay.
And for a lot of people, they'll be like, oh yeah, that is where, people feel badly actually, because, I talk to people about Minneapolis because, they say, how you doing? And I'll say, and George Floyd, and they're like, oh, I forgot that was Minneapolis. We're totally excusable, right? Of course, somebody could forget where that happened because it was a global movement and they're not keeping it front of mind. But I'll tell you what, people in Minneapolis, we don't talk about like a game of checkers where you move from one square to the George Floyd square to the Renee Good square. This has all been a continuous life experience here. So we don't think of it around Minneapolis as back when that happened, that other thing. It's like a family memory, where someone will be like, well, it's been a long time since your divorce. How you doing? You're like, well, to me, it feels like one day after another day after another day after another. Like the divorce feels right now, or death right now, as much as it felt back then. I'm just dealing with it differently. That's where the George Floyd murder and the police response and the Trump federal response to that feels like it's current day. So when you're out on the street, I mean, I'm literally wearing some of the same clothes as when police officers were macing us during the George Floyd responses. And the lessons learned by people who've been out on the street and seeing people out, when I got to Renee Good's death site and I look around, I'm seeing the same people I was standing with at the George Floyd murder 5 years ago. Eye to eye, seeing each other, hello again, and we know. So this is just a reality of what's happening in Minnesota. And I'm not sure all of this translates to every other place because we have had the size of our city, the makeup of it, the commitment of people, and to see from the George Floyd, where it was basically the citizens against the police force. And in this case, the police force and the mayor and the governor have been on the side of the citizens, and we're pushing out a federal incursion. So it has really created a sense of us versus the masked armed agents that carry no badges and no name placards, breaking car windows and dragging people to the ground and stepping on their necks. And I know a lot of people have seen this on videos, but for us, we're like, oh, that's over in Frogtown. Oh, that's in the Whittier neighborhood. Like it is right here. So when we go out, any of us who go out, I mean, I'll go out today and I will feel the same pressure because ICE is leaving, but they're not gone. So they're still driving around. They're still breaking car windows. They're still running into buildings. They're still doing their chaos creating nonsense. And what the people of Minnesota have decided to do was to give whistles to everybody. Somehow these little plastic whistles, I mean, I have one right here. Yeah. You've probably seen these little things. Yeah. These are the camera, but these little plastic whistles that say, this says report ICE with a phone number on it. And they're 3D printed. These things now are just like within days of this all starting, these things started showing up in businesses, at yoga studios, at music stores, just sitting in little buckets by the door, grab a whistle. So with just sort of one motion, everybody's like, carry a whistle everywhere you go because you blow these when you see ICE and you announce because they're not announcing. And look, Fred, I'm going to rant for one more minute. If they were going after the worst of the worst, that would be one thing. Yep. But what they wanted from Minneapolis to bring an end to the surge, as they say it, this is what Holman said yesterday, just such utter nonsense.
I wanted your voting records, didn't they?
No, that was an early bribe from Pam Bondi. I interrupted. They didn't want that. They said yesterday, the enforcement can now end because now we have a deal with the jails and the prisons. Well, the director of corrections for the state of Minnesota 3 weeks ago called a press conference and said, "This is unprecedented for me. I never thought I would have to do this. I've been in corrections my entire working life. The federal government is lying to the people of Minnesota. They're saying that they're gathering up criminals, murderers, sex offenders, child traffickers on the street." And he said, they've named one person at the time. Now they've named two, but they named one person. He said they put out on their public statements that they came in and ICE agents captured them on the street. And he said, I want you to watch this video. And they play a video, and it's the handoff of that person in the basement of the garage of the Department of Corrections, where they reached out to ICE and handed him over. And he said, it makes a difference when they say that we're letting these people out on the street, which we are not and never have, we've had a working cooperation with ICE, and we turn over immigrants who commit crimes to ICE. And that's what we're doing. So then he said, we're announcing today a website to counter what the federal government is saying they're doing here. This level of pushback from, you don't get much more conservative. Then there were a group of sheriffs and police chiefs, police captains, who stood together and said, the federal government is lying to you. Here's what is happening. Our own off-duty officers have reported, and he said, in all of these precincts around Minneapolis area and outstate Minnesota, have the same stories. A brown-skinned person who works for the police is pulled over by ICE for no reason at all other than the color of their skin. And they have had to defend themselves from being dragged out of cars and having their windows shattered. Yeah. He said, when we reached out to ICE, his police captain said, we reached out to ICE and Department of Homeland Security and said, what are you going to do about this? And they said, you have to file a complaint. So he said, they sent us a website. This is the police captain saying, so I went to the website, and the first question is, what is the name and badge number of the officer? They don't have names and they don't have badge numbers. He said they've set up a system where you cannot complain, and we know and trust this is true because it's our own off-duty officers. Wow. So this narrative that's, and look, if you think the wokey police captain of Brooklyn Center is going to be out making up a bunch of stories because he hates Donald Trump. Look, if he doesn't care for Donald Trump, it's probably because of what Donald Trump has done, not because of what he has done. And this is what has grandmothers out on the street with signs that say, I'm a grandmother, not a fascist, and standing in the face of ICE agents and stepping in between them and people that they know have every legal right to be here. Right. And ICE doesn't care because ICE agents in Minneapolis were paid an additional bonus for every person they brought into detention, whether they were in the country with legal rights or not. Wow. They didn't care. There's a financial incentive. This boondoggle rot of funding ICE with a higher personnel fund than the United States Marines.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, it's obscene. It is obscene.
And then they're trying to build ICE detention centers all over the country now. They're trying to do one right here in Kansas City to basically be a whole new prison system and the Supreme Court has given ICE permission to racially profile people.
Yes.
And violate their, Fourth Amendment rights, right? I mean,
yes.
It's crazy. It's just
It's just crazy. It's crazy. And look, the reason that they're building detention centers with private contractors to not only build the buildings, the detention centers, but to operate them is because private detention center businesses are like, oh, the federal government just released billions of dollars. Let's go get it. This is the fraud. This is the boondoggle. And when they come into Minnesota to talk about Somali healthcare fraud, while they're committing fraud galore, it's almost as if they're saying, you people don't get to commit fraud. We get to commit fraud.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party sweetheart dealing, and in fact, I'm in a group that's doing a bunch of work around getting behind the scene on all these detention centers because they are the most putrid level of fraud that one could imagine. And I guess if Elon Musk wasn't, outed for trying to get to the hottest party at Jeffrey Epstein's island, maybe they would hire him back to figure out the fraud inside of DHS and inside of the pseudo criminal justice system that they've unleashed via ICE. So the rot in this thing is so bad. And I know so many Republicans are leaving their affiliation with Trump over this. And I am super glad. It is important and it matters. And the blind support of this guy's cruelty and to institutionalize cruelty is James Cohen had this saying where he would say, if you're going to be
founder of Black theology in America.
Yeah. He's like, if you're going to be racist, I don't care. But if your racism is given government power, it becomes my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's happening here is that we have a kind of bigotry against certain people that now has governmental authority. And it's a real problem. And it's okay if people take this moment to step away. Mm-hmm. So whether it's singing resistance organizing or bikes or vigils or 50,000 person marches, this city rose up basically at the start of January. Look, ICE came in December, and then it was Christmas, and then it was New Year, and then ICE hit the streets hard at the beginning of January. So they came in December, but it was really the beginning of January when things really started to ramp up. And the people of Minnesota got out on the streets every single day, everywhere in the state.
Wow.
Bridges and signs and vigils and walks and the level. I mean, sociologists and people who study social movements will probably spend a lot of time trying to decipher what happened. And but it was classic wisdom of the crowd stuff and freedom.
That is so interesting.
So I guess my encouragement to anybody thinking, what are we going to do in our city when this happens, is lean into the spirit of freedom and activism and activation more so than who's in charge, who has the list. Like, people are texting me all the time, like, hey, how do you know where these things are? Because I pop up all the time, because I drive around. And they're like, how do you know? I'm like, look, there's no one place to go. I go to Indivisible. I go to these. I follow different people on Instagram. People send a text. Like, there's no hub. There's no like, what's your rapid response for a federal incursion? The first mistake, I think, would be for people to think, let's prepare what our response is going to be. What we need to do is prepare social cohesion so we can do anything we have to do.
Yeah.
And if social cohesion doesn't exist. And I know it's different. It's harder in certain areas. It was very hard in Chicago because of how the city's laid out, and people on the north side don't feel connected to the south side, and the west side is a long way from the north side. And there's just a lot of things that make Chicago their damage to be done in these little pockets where people couldn't see it as easily.
Yeah. Even Kansas City is like 2 states, 2 mayors. Can't see Kansas, can't see Missouri. Northland is very much its own thing where I live versus the rest of the city. When I was pastoring the large mega church in the Northland, I started intentionally moving my people to the core just because we were so disconnected from the core of our city, So, with social work and all that. So anyway, I am so grateful for you being here. And for your work that you're doing. What would you, first of all, tell people how to find you on Vote Common Good, but then also, which are the groups that we should be watching and staying connected to, even though, because not all of us are going to have that kind of spontaneity that you're talking about, right? So I'm sitting here in Kansas City. I know they're already trying to do an ICE center here. There's only 2 dots, blue dots in the state of Missouri. Where I live, one's in St. Louis and one's in Kansas City, right? So, I'm talking about, the political map. They're trying to build a detention center here in Kansas City. There's already resistance forming to that. But what are some of the places that we should try to stay in touch with, those of us who aren't, in this social cohesion in Minneapolis or Minnesota?
Well, Indivisible is an amazingly effective group. There's a website called People Over Papers, which is a citizen reporting website where people report ICE activity all over the country. So you log into that website, and then there's a map, and you can see dots and photos all over the country of people that see ICE actions. That starts to get you sort of tuned up to how this works. Because what you're going to have to do if ICE continues to do what they did here elsewhere, and I'm not sure they will. I think the polling on this is so bad. I think people across the spectrum hate it. I don't know that they will ever do anything like this again. Give a little nickname, Operation Metro Surge to their thing, like there's somehow some military, operation. and come in with masked agents. I think at the federal level, they're going to change some of that. So some of the most egregious, clear call, anybody who cares about anything could come and defend here. You know, the Second Amendment people had to show up when Trump said that Alex Preddy can't carry a gun without putting his life at risk by federal agents. They're like, yeah, we've been arguing the other. Awfully quiet, frankly. Haven't seen any of the NRA folks calling for a big meeting in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. You know, they're all don't tread on me until they actually say comply or die. Yeah. You know, they're actually don't tread on me. Well, tread on me a little bit. I mean, the just the emptiness of that whole movement hasn't shown up. So I don't think every city or every state are going to see this. And there's a lot of us here that are worried about this idea that they're just going to roll this out somewhere else. I think they've been chastened. I think Bovino, who ran this whole thing, is going to be in obscurity and shame. I think something will be different. But ICE will show up all over the country, partly because they've been given billions of dollars that they have to spend. Yep. So there's groups, but frankly, I think what you're better off doing is meet people in your area that you can know and can trust, and get yourself ready for however it's going to come. Because there are no, look, if you haven't followed Singing Resistance, that's a great social movement where we went out to the streets and sang outside of hotels that had were housing ICE agents, calling them to quit their jobs. And there were thousands of us out on the street singing, and it's very, very moving and very motivating. And they've put together some, but here's an example of that group. I know a bunch of people running that group. They're fantastic, social, active, young, singing people. And they'll have 2,000, 3,000 people show up. They don't have an infrastructure for any money for their work. They don't want one. Instead, they raise money to go to all the groups that are doing housing support, because so many people who are under threat by ICE have stayed in their homes, not gone to work and not gone to school, and they're not earning any money, and rent is due and they have to pay it. And so a bunch of people are raising money. But like Singing Resistance they're not forming a 501c3. They don't have a bank account. They're not going to do this, but they're training tens of thousands of people all over the country through Zoom meetings and creating curriculum. Like, that's the spirit. And that's a very Minnesota thing. Very and somebody will get their hands on it and, and gatekeep it for sure. But for right now, the best thing you can do is get your people in conversation about this so that they're ready. And I know that might sound counterintuitive, like, well, it'd be better to go learn what others have done. But what we did here was a natural response to the relationships and to the issues. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you can learn some things about a broad-based citizen pushback. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it really wasn't that Bruce Springsteen made a song and came here. I mean, that was great, especially for some of us. But there are a lot of people on the streets that are like, who is that? Literally, like, the shocking number of people don't know who Bruce Springsteen is. I don't know if you know that, but
younger crowds, right? Yeah.
It's very true. Younger crowds and people from some other cultural backgrounds. There's not a lot of Somali women that are deep tied into the difference between The River and Born in the USA albums. So not everybody. So every little group kind of pops up and has its thing, and frankly, the fact that it was 20 below zero on some of those days, or zero on other days, and so cold, and Minnesotans are like, we've been preparing to be outside in cold like that for our lifetime. Mm-hmm. And you know who's not? ICE agents from South Texas, who are like, dear God, what judgment has fallen upon these people. So I mean, I guess that's my advice: is your best bet is to meet the people nearby you more than trying to figure out what went on here.
And just tell people how to find you. Vote Common Good. Yeah,
votecommon.com, and then all the Vote Common Good things, and then
you're doing your own podcast all the time.
Yeah, we have a podcast and a live stream, and the website's kind of a portal, votecommongood.com for for our different media stuff, and we work with candidates around the country and all that. And
all right,
we are an organization that gets involved in a lot of things because a lot of things are intersectional, and we have to cross in those spaces. So we do a lot of things, but fundamentally we try to help voters prevent these kinds of crises in the first place.
Yeah,
which hasn't gone well in the last 2 years.
2
years ago was a problem.
Yeah. Thank you for your work. It was great just tuning into you these last 70 days, seeing your face and your video and all that. And
I hope that comes to an end. Frankly, I don't think I'll be roaming the streets giving daily updates or multiple times a day updates. So
it was helpful, though. I felt like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you so much.
A season of helpfulness. Yep, you bet.
Appreciate you. Thanks everybody for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you next time. Get out and do some good.
Yeah, love one another.
Take care. Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.